Hello there. Welcome back to another video. Today I want to invite you on a tour of my library, specifically for the TBRs that I plan to read this year. If you are new to the channel, I have made it a goal this year that I'm not going to read books from my library or buy new books. I'm going to be focused on reading the books that I already own, that have been sitting on my shelf for some of them quite a few years at this point. And I wanted to use today to just go through some of those books so that you all can get a little sneak peek at what's coming up. I have no idea if I will end up getting through all of these books by the end of the year, but I'm going to try my best. I'm going to do this in two parts. So today I'm going to focus on the fiction books that I want to read, and then I'll do a part two that will be nonfiction. I think I've mentioned this before in videos, but I like to pair my nonfiction and fiction together. I find nonfiction takes me a little bit longer to get through depending on the genre and like the length of the book. Diversion aside, today we are focused on fiction, and we are on one half of my library, which is composed of like classic fiction, some young adult fiction, fantasy, the like tiny bit of mystery books that I have, and just like some general adult fiction. I do not anticipate reading all of the books on the shelf that you see behind you. A lot of these have been with me for several years, and so I have read them. I'm going to go through specifically the fiction for this year, books that are brand new to me, books that for the most part I also don't know anything about, because a lot of these have come secondhand to me. And so I saw the title, or I saw the book cover, or I read the synopsis and thought, that's interesting, I might want to read it one day, and hence it's on my shelf. I'm going to start with the fantasy shelf. I'm currently filming a review of one of these books. I don't have it with me right now. I'll just save it till that video. But the other two on this shelf that I want to go through are Lauren Groff, The Vaster Wilds. I know nothing about this, but based off of the synopsis, it sounded very interesting. It calls it a thrilling adventure story and a penetrating fable about trying to find a new way of living in a world succumbing to the churn of colonialism. I think this might actually be placed in the wrong shelf, because it may be a historical fiction novel instead. My book organization is not perfect, as you can obviously tell. I think I put it there just because this is the author of a book or series called Fates and Furies, and so I thought maybe this was also fiction. But regardless, we'll have to see when I read this one. This book is one where my partner's mom had a bunch of boxes over last summer of books that she was trying to rehome, and me being me, I was like, please let me go through them. I went through them and brought like a huge stack home, this being one of them, because it sounded interesting, and that's kind of my vibe. If it piques my interest, I normally take it, because that's kind of how I like to read, is anything that sounds interesting. I don't really care about specific genres. I don't really even have favorite authors, so if a concept sounds intriguing, then I'm probably going to read it, or at least put it on my to be read, my want to read list. This one is a proper fantasy. It is The Sight Witch by Susan Dennard. Again, something I know nothing about. It looks like there is potentially a series that goes with it. And it has like a fancy map in it, which is kind of cool. I think this fantasy is one that I believe my partner purchased. I don't think he's ever read it, so I'm going to read it and determine whether or not it is a good book. I will let you know what I think about it. The next few books I have are general adult fiction. The first one is One Day, which many of you might have actually already seen the movie that this was based off of. I feel like I have seen the movie that was based off of this book, or at least I have heard of the movie before. I didn't realize it was a book, but I'll just read like the back of it to tell you. It's 1988 and Dexter Mayhew and Emma Morley have only just met, but after only one day together, they cannot stop thinking about one another. Over 20 years, snapshots of that relationship are revealed on the same day, July 15th of each year. Dex and Em face squabbles and fights, hopes and missed opportunities, laughter and tears, and as the true meaning of this one crucial day is revealed, they must come to grips with the nature of love and life itself. So my assumption is, right, they meet, they spend a day together, and we're following them throughout their lives and we're getting flashbacks to that day. I first thought maybe this was one where they met once a year, but I think it's just flashbacks. So that's one day. I'll be interested to see how this book goes. To be honest, modern contemporary adult fiction is not something that I always gravitate towards. I don't own a lot of it, and I've never really found one that I absolutely love. So it's always like been on my periphery, and I'll pick up something every once in a while. Generally they're okay, but it's not like when I'm reading fiction, fantasy or historical fiction is definitely where I tend to lean most. So I'll be interested to see about one day. The next one I have is We Are Called to Rise by Laura McBride. I find this funny because I just read another McBride book, James McBride. I bet you they're not related at all, but it's just kind of funny to me that they have the same last name. The back of this book says 3 lives are bound together by a split-second mistake, and a child's fate hangs in the balance. Far from the neon lights of the Vegas Strip, 3 lives are about to collide. A middle-aged woman attempting to revive her marriage, a returning soldier waking up in a hospital bed with no memory of how he got there, a very brave 8-year-old immigrant boy. This is a story about families, the ones we have and the ones we make. It's a story about America today, where so many cultures and points of view collide and coexist. Told in 3 pitch-perfect voices, Laura McBride's deeply moving debut shows what happens when the protective borders of our lives are suddenly smashed, and how ordinary strangers can rise to the extraordinary challenge of caring for each other. Sounds like a very fascinating book. I am curious, it sounds like it's also possibly recent, so I wonder when the copyright. It's 2014, so actually over 10 years ago. But still, themes that, if you know anything about the current state of American society and politics, these themes have not gone away. They have only become more politicized and radicalized and aggressive. So I will be intrigued to hear what an author 12 years ago had to say about some of these things. It also just sounds like it's going to be a really good story. I'm always intrigued by people's debuts because I can't imagine writing a book. I know that anything that I would write for the first time would just be awful. So I am always fascinated by by authors' first works. And yes, of course, every book has imperfections, even authors who have, been writing for decades. But it's just like fascinating to see that skill divide between myself and them, if that makes any sense. Anyway, the last general fiction novel that I have on the list to read this year is called The Lost Summers of Newport. It is by a trio of authors. We have a picture of them on the back, all female authors. Apparently this is maybe a second book. It says that these authors wrote All the Ways We Said Goodbye. So that's curious to me that they all write books together. I wonder what that is like. Just based off of the front cover, it looks like we're following 3 different women in 3 different time frames. So I'm curious if each woman picked a character in a timeline and that's what they wrote. I'll have to do some research on this book when I actually pick it up and start reading, because that is curious to me. But we have our 3 female characters. This book is described as a novel of money and secrets set among the famous summer mansions of Newport, Rhode Island, spanning over a century from the Gilded Age to the present day. Ooh, I wonder if this is going to be one where all the women lived in the same mansion and were following both the house and these women like throughout time. I've never read a book like that, but I've watched a lot of like booktubers and heard about books that do that, and I always think it's such an interesting concept to do. Like, I came across a post the other day of a book in Paris where it was a Paris apartment, and it was following two families in two different timelines in that apartment, and these women who were like trying to figure out what it meant to be a mother and to be a woman in the world in Paris in this apartment with their families. I just find it such an intriguing, like, I guess maybe it's a trope that I've never read, but like I just find it fascinating. So I'm very curious to read this book. I think it will be good. I'm anticipating this one positively. Most of the other books on this shelf I have actually already read, or are books that I plan to read at a later point. So like this shelf here is a bunch of classic fiction and young adult historical fiction that I read all of these when I was growing up through high school. Half the books on the shelf above it are also young adult fiction that I grew up reading. These are like some other classics. I have an Edith Wharton, The Canterbury Tales, Tolstoy. I've read all of these at some point, and if I haven't read them, the very top shelf is some more Tolstoy, Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, John Steinbeck, Cormac McCarthy. These very like classic pieces of literature and classic American literature, and I want to do a different series reading through all of those books again, some of which I've already read, but my partner has not read a lot of them, and so I want to do something where like he and I will read them together, because I think it's just always fun to get somebody's first impression of a book. A lot of these books I either read in school or I just read by myself and didn't always have someone to discuss with, and so I think it will just be really fun to read them for another time with somebody who's their first time and be able to talk through the books. So stay tuned. That will come at some point. Maybe it won't be till next year or the year after, who knows. But for now, we are focused on my own personal TBRs for this year. I moved the chair out of the way because I have one more shelf to go through, which is like mystery thriller kind of books, which I have all of like this much of. But there are a few that I want to read that I'm going to pull out. Okay, so despite the fact that I don't have many of these, I actually want to try to read all of them this year. The first one is called Play Dead. I know nothing about this book. I've had it for a while because several years ago I had a friend who was going through her shelves and trying to declutter and had a few books that she was trying to get rid of, and I was like, I've read a few thrillers. It's not like my go-to genre, but I think they're interesting, and this one sounded like a pretty fascinating concept. The next one I have is called The Crossing Places. There you go, by Emily Griffiths. This one, honestly, I picked it up. I think it was also from the same batch of books where my partner's mother was trying to get rid of stuff. This one I picked up because the main character is a forensic anthropologist, and I am obsessed with forensic anthropologists. Susan Black, Dr. Susan Black maybe was her name. I'll post up the couple of books and who they're by, but it was a series of 2 books by a forensic anthropologist, kind of going into what is forensic anthropology, how did it come about, what do they use it for, what are the methods they use, her experiences in anthropology and in forensic anthropology. Fascinating books. Absolutely fell in love with the science and with her experience, and so when I saw the main character here was a forensic anthropologist, I was like, oh yes please, I'm gonna read that. Otherwise I have nothing about this book. Know nothing about it. The next one is a P.D. James book, who I think is a very well-respected mystery author. I don't know anything about them. I know that when I go to libraries and I see her books on the shelf, she's one of those authors who just like takes up her own section of the library because she was that prolific in her writing career. This one also is one of those books where we are following, does it say? The staff of Hogarth's Forensic Science Laboratory in solving the murder of this young girl. Again, I saw forensic science and went, yes, please, I want to read. Hence, it's on my shelf and it's on my list for this year. Oh, also, if you didn't see the title, Death of an Expert Witness, P.D. James. Then we have another thriller, which is The Woman in Cabin 10. This one, honestly, when I read the synopsis, it kind of reminded me of that one Chris Hemsworth movie, which I've never seen, but I know it's a thriller of like Cabin in the Woods or something like that. I've seen trailers. I know nothing about this, but I just know it's one of those like classic, a bunch of young kids go to a cabin in the woods thinking nothing bad could happen, and then bad things happen. So this is a psychological thriller. We'll see if it creeps me out. I think it could be interesting. I may hate it. I don't really know if I'm a psychological thriller person, but I have been getting more into them because I started watching Frankie's Shelf. If you know, you know. And he reads a lot of like thriller, dark novels, and I love watching his videos, and I love hearing what he has to say about the books, and it has inspired me to pick up more of the genre. So that's why The Woman in Cabin 10 is on my shelf and on my list for the year. I'm going to go through the last three really quickly. We have The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhorn. I don't know how to say that. Lawhorn. I don't know how to say this author's name. This is set in Maine, 1789, when the Kennebec River freezes, entombing a man in ice. Martha Ballard is summoned to examine the body. As a midwife and healer, her diary is a record of every birth and death, crime and debacle that unfolds in the close-knit community of Hallowell. Months earlier, Martha documented the details of an alleged rape committed by two of the town's most respected gentlemen, one of whom has now been found dead in the ice. But when a male physician declares the death accidental, Martha is forced to investigate on her own. Don't we just love that plotline where a woman is like, I'm gonna take matters into my own hands and figure this out? I bet you can already tell what intrigued me about this book. Forensic anthropology. I know she's not, this is kind of before a time in which that career in science was established, but who doesn't like a good whodunit and mystery solving novel? So that is The Frozen River. But this one is The Lioness. It is set in Tanzania in 1964, so completely different culture and country from my own, which is always interesting to read. This is a Hollywood couple on a honeymoon safari that goes very, very wrong. And that is all I will say about this at this point. Last but not least, we have The Missing by C.L. Taylor. This is about a 15-year-old boy who goes missing and his mother's unshakable faith that he's still alive, that her family has nothing to do with his disappearance, and her journey to try to find him. This is considered psychological suspense. Again, I am curious to see what I will think of the book and like what my experience will be reading it, given it is a genre that I'm not super familiar with. Okay, and with that, I have jibber-jabbered enough. Hopefully this has piqued your interest to continue following me throughout this year and my journey of reading through all of these books. I'll be very curious if you've either read these authors or read some of these books. Like, leave me a comment with what you thought about it, or, drop your little insider knowledge to leave me curious about picking these books up. And let me know, like, what are your reading goals for the year? What are some of the books that you have on your list that you're looking forward to? And I will see you in the next video.